Hi, Deacon Ron here. One of the things I've been looking at over the last couple of videos is our image of God, and my basic premise has been that to have seen Jesus is to have seen the Father. To know Jesus is to know the Father. To know Jesus is to know God. Jesus came to reveal the true nature and personality of God and to free us from negative and toxic images of God. And one of the most popular or common toxic images of God is that God is the great big torturer in the sky. God is the angry, judgmental and punishing God, and we need to be afraid of him. In John 3:17 it says, "For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save it through him." Jesus did not come to condemn, punish and judge the world. He came to save it and heal it. When he was accused in the Gospels of eating with sinners and tax collectors, he says that I have come for sinners, not the righteous, because it's the sick who need the doctor and not the healthy. Jesus' attitude towards sin is that it is a sickness that needs healing more than it is a crime that needs punishing. And that's good news because we are all sinners. We see his attitude towards sin and sinners beautifully expressed in the story of the woman caught in adultery. This woman is dragged before Jesus by a bloodthirsty crowd because she has been caught in the act of committing adultery, and they want to stone her to death because this is what the law of Moses requires. And they believe that that law is from God. It's not from Moses, it's not from any human being, it's the law of God. They believed in an angry, judgmental and punishing God. They believed that God wanted this woman killed. They believed that God hated sinners. And Jesus just refuses to buy into this image of God. He makes them realize that they have all sinned, and so they all walk away one by one. And when he's left alone with the woman, he gently calls her to himself, forgives her, and sets her free, and tells her to go sin no more. And again, that's an important point too. He doesn't tell her to go and continue sinning. Jesus' love, mercy and forgiveness is not an excuse for us to do whatever we want. Sin is its own punishment. If I put my hand in the fire, I'm going to get burnt. If I commit sin, if I do evil, I'm going to get evil consequences. If I reject God in this life, well, then God respects our freedom, and that rejection has consequences in the afterlife. We also see Jesus' attitude towards sin and sinners in the parable of the prodigal son. The younger son takes his share of the money, spends it all on women, parties and wild living, ends up wanting to eat pig food. He has hit rock bottom. His life has become unbearable and unmanageable, and he decides to get up and go back to his father's house. And in the parable, Jesus gives us this very important detail. He says, when the father saw him coming, the father runs out to greet him, runs out and embraces him. Before the son says anything, the son could have been coming back, as far as the father knows, he could have been coming back to ask for more money. But before the son says anything, the father greets him, embraces him, and instead of anger, he puts a ring on his finger. Instead of judgment, he gives him a coat, and instead of punishment, he has a feast held in his honor. This is not an angry, judgmental and punishing God. This is a merciful, forgiving and compassionate God. Notice in both stories that love precedes judgment. Too often we proceed with our judgments and never get to love. We judge people and say they're bad, they're sinners, they're no good. No. I think one of the take-home messages of both these stories is that before we judge people, we must love them. And they must know that we love them. I think maybe that's why God has made Jesus the judge of all of us. At the end of the Maronite Mass, at the end of the Maronite Divine Liturgy, the celebrant says, "Go in peace now with the loving nourishment that you have received from the forgiving altar of the Lord." Notice he doesn't say from the angry, punishing, judgmental altar. He says from the forgiving altar, because the God we have received from that altar is a sea of love and forgiveness, not as many people imagine him to be, an ocean of anger and hatred. We are all of us, our families, the church and the world, we are all broken, sinful and wounded. But the good news is that God has met our sinfulness with his forgiveness. He has met our brokenness with his healing, and he has met our suffering with his compassion. Thank you for listening.